3d6 down the line.
All right, we are done. Welcome to the Detox.
Where we learned that the entire thing.
Oh, go ahead, Ted.
The entire thing was Mort the Goblin's dream, dreaming he was a donkey in the land of Dolmenwood. Everything was a dream.
It's like crossover. Yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
Did you guys think whenever we ended it, like the way I described it, that it was going to be like a Wizard of Oz, everything was just a dream? Yeah. That
JR
kind of
got shot, and it was all a dream, and lost. They all died on the airplane, and
right.
The thing that really killed me, though, is at the end of the thing when you're like, so in Dolmenwood, we could dial the whimsy up to 11, and then the very next thing is tune in next week for Ardent Vool, where we're going to just crank that whimsy dial all the way down to -5.
So true. Yeah, it's going to be harsh reality when we get back to the main campaign.
The violence knob goes up when you turn the whimsy knob down, I think. So.
Yeah. Well, I was noticing as I was reading people's reactions to these videos in our various platforms that most people seem to be very positive about it, but people who weren't as familiar with Dolmenwood were asking, like, is this what it's like? Because if this is what it is, I may not be that interested, and which is fair enough. Because if you're not into like this level of whimsy, and if this is the only thing that you have to go on about what Dolmenwood's like, then yeah, it might not be for you. But to make it clear to the audience out there, this is not. This is the and I think Gavin would probably back me up on this, is that this is indicative of a jaunt that you could take in the midst of a larger Dolmenwood campaign that you could insert easily if you wanted to provide like a little change of pace upon what was going on in the larger campaign.
Yeah.
But Dolmenwood itself, and you can clearly see this if you watch our deep dives, which are linked down below, that Dolmenwood itself, the game, is primarily a hex crawl where you're exploring the mortal realms of Dolmenwood, but they are infused with fairy, and there are lots of different opportunities for you to visit these fairy realms and to have fairy adventures, and this would be one of those. That's all we're doing here.
And John, correct me if I'm wrong, but so the Kickstarter version that's coming out, he's changed the rules. He added some kindred and classes and glamours and things, but fundamentally Dolmenwood itself, the place, hasn't really changed much.
No.
And so, if you've watched our videos from our first campaign, and if you haven't, you should.
Definitely should.
There's some whimsy in there. And then there's some places where we get our asses handed to us. There is some seriously bad news. I had trouble camping. That was fun, right?
Winter, baby. It's rough.
When we go up to the Abbey and that tooth monster, whatever his name was, Mr. Bones or something.
Mm-hmm. Back in Bones.
That's bad news. There is bad news shit in this world. And like when we played through the Winter's Daughter thing, I didn't realize that was actually like a whole module within a campaign setting. I thought that was sort of part of the thing.
Oh, good, because that's what I would... It worked.
it totally worked. And so once I realized that was like a almost a plug-in, if you will, then the whole thing started to kind of come together for me. And I think so anyone who's watching and who's kind of wondering about the whimsy thing, whatever, it's like it's a setting that you can plug and play all the different bits that you want.
Right.
To have it play out how you feel like you want to play out with your campaign, with your table, whatever, I think we're all down with the whimsy here, like Mosslings.
Well, the other good thing too is that you guys had experience with like normal Dolmenwood, so you were gracious. You were gracious enough to actually just sort of take what I was offering and run with it, which was really, really cool.
Yeah, prepared for it.
Well, go ahead, Matt.
What I was going to say is that what I like about this setting is that it's an active choice, right? Like even when we were in our first session and we were doing this gritty stuff, there were doorways to the fairy, right? There were doorways to fairy roads that we could choose to go into or not, right?
Yep.
Like it was very much up to player agency whether or not, which direction they wanted to take this in. Like, it's not just a dial that the DM can adjust. The players themselves can choose how much whimsy, how much fairy tale do I want versus how much gritty realism do I want.
That's an excellent point. As we saw in our old campaign, like when the door opened to the White Way, you guys chose to go in there and discover what kind of happened. And the same thing, if you looked at that fairy door as the same way that the Cauldron is a fairy door, everything that the setup entails it telegraphs the notion that you're going to be dealing heavily with dream, and so therefore it's likely that the whimsy dial will be turned up, and so then you could, like you said, Matt, could make an informed choice about, do we want to engage with that whimsy? Then let's go into the Cauldron. If not, plenty of other stuff to do.
Oh my yes,
great big easy nope button.
Yep.
I'd like to say that the setting, to me, like, there's a lot of group choice in there. You can either have it like mirror like a modern day take of a Grimm's fairy tale, or like the old school like German Black Forest Grimm's fairy tales where there's like cannibal witches and all kinds of stuff. It's just, that's up for the group to decide where they want to go on that. And when we first played Dolmenwood, it was, first of all, it was my first OSC experience in like 30 some odd years, right? So I didn't really know what to expect, I think. And then our first encounter was that Rag and Bones Man Gloam thing, which really, 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 really was scary. It was fucking, it was scary.
Yeah, that was Grimm's fairy tale. Sure.
Like weird monster was like awful, Yeah. And I think that basically flavored our view of Dolmenwood for the rest of the campaign. I kind of wish that, like, if I could go back and play that campaign again, I would make braver choices. I felt like there was a lot of times that we went to explore a hex, we saw something weird, we all had flashbacks of the Gloam, and we ran.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. If there's a lot of times when you avoided things to err on the side of caution. I definitely didn't want to tell you not to do that. But if you don't engage, you're missing out a lot of what Dolmenwood has to offer. And you're right that I think it was just the circumstances. There was like one being fresh to OSR style play. That was like the biggest one. I think a big part two was the Gloam encounter, which made you fear everything. Right. And then 3 was the fact that we rolled randomly and it started in winter.
Yeah.
The fact that
we never had full hit points for months.
Yeah, it was really brutal. Yeah. There was times whenever you actually decided not to leave Prigwort because there was a blizzard. Right. Yeah. So for potential referees out there, be aware that I'm not saying you shouldn't roll for random season. I think that's really fun, and you definitely should. But I loved it. But the weather, the seasons really have an effect on how this campaign setting sort of opens up, and you should be aware of that before you decide to roll randomly, because winter changes a lot of things.
It really does.
I love
personally, man. If I was doing this for my kids' game, I would not start them in winter right away, because I think it would just be. We all accepted the misery fest of Ted trying to camp in winter,
and enjoyed it.
Right, and we enjoyed it at Ted's expense.
Yeah, I know you did.
But I think if you have younger players that are still trying to get their feet wet, I personally wouldn't have done that. I would have probably done spring or fall. Like if they rolled winter, I probably would back it up to fall so they can see what's coming and you can telegraph what's happening. Yeah. And then still not let them necessarily go out in the woods and freeze to death on their first night out. But
and winter too is a very loaded term in this setting because of the past history with the Cold Prince having put the place into eternal winter. So the people in the setting look upon winter in a totally different fashion than in other settings. There's a mystical quality to it that's associated with evil things. Right. And so, and on the one hand, if you drop them into winter, you could reinforce that immediately. Or if you did what Mike was saying, is sort of like you drop them into a nicer season, but then telegraph that winter always comes and that means something different to people in Dolmenwood.
The other thing you could do, of course, is since old school gaming depends so heavily on downtime, spell study, and things like that. You play it in. Winter's coming, guys. We got to get back to town so that we can, make our spells and do our training and stuff like that. And then, like for example, there was that tavern that was smuggling beer or something like that. That could have been a winter adventure. And then, spring comes. All right, let's get back out there and break out the mule kind of thing. And that we spent 3 months making spells and scrolls and potions, and we're ready to hit the road kind of thing. So I would definitely keep. Anybody listening, I would definitely keep the weather part of the system, but definitely. Maybe not if you have
you can't not have weather be part of the system. But think about it, we didn't have that opportunity in our game because we started in the depths of winter. We were broke. It was like we had to go out into the woods and try and find some loot.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also like in terms of like driving factors, like this is one thing that I've thought a lot about because, you know, the character that I played in that campaign, Halifax Swinny, you know, he was this squire trying to become a knight, right? And so there were certain, plot hooks that once they were dangled there, you know, it wouldn't make any sense for that character not to gravitate towards those.
No doubt. The very first one, like the reason you went to the Gloam is because your lady's daughter was kidnapped. Yeah.
Yeah. And it would have felt like, you know, I'm never one for like, oh, this is what my character would do, blah, blah, blah. But it would have felt like so egregiously out of character to say, oh, yeah, she's fine. Yeah. Well, let's go do this other thing. Right? Yeah. That, in terms of, you know, like things that drive things like the weather and like, this is another one that can really like guide at those early stages of the campaign, like what's going to happen. Right. Yeah.
It's really cool.
I would say that my last comment about the weather is that it really did make the woods feel like an additional party member. Right. Like it was something else that you had to interact with and interacted with you regardless of whether or not you wanted it. Like most campaign settings, like, and I'm just gonna say, I loved my time as a child in Forgotten Realms. Right. But other than some descriptions about sandy palm trees or like whatever, it didn't really matter where you were, you know, they were just place names on a map. But when you really have dangerous weather be part of your campaign setting, it makes that world be like another party member in the game. And I thought that this last game, I thought it did that better than any other systems that I had seen.
Or an antagonist.
Yeah.
Or an antagonist, right.
Yeah, no doubt. It integrates it right into the game itself where, I mean, you could play AD&D and of course if you had like the Wilderness Survival Guide or you dig deep into the DMG, you could find charts that would give you that kind of stuff. But it was never assumed that it was just a part and parcel of the game. And plus we were kids, so we never rolled on those charts anyway. Yeah. But as far as I just wanted to speak real quickly on the design of the adventure and kind of what I'm seeing from my end here. I think it's very well designed. I don't know if you guys could kind of pick up on that yourselves, but it's nicely Xandered, I guess is the phrase that we're using now. Like it has like multiple ways to approach different rooms. Usually like an easier and hard way to get to like the meteor rooms, right? Like there's the secret door into the Cauldron room, but then there's the other way around, you know. And what I really like too is that the goal, which was the moon map, what I liked is that you could find it, but you couldn't get it unless you got that other key, you know, which then engendered more exploration, which I thought was really, really cool.
You noticed that.
Yeah. I just thought that was really, really, and everything sort of had like its own little puzzle that you could apply to the problem in the room itself, but then also take out of the room and apply in other places if you just thought laterally, which you guys are excellent at now as OSR veterans. And it was just really cool to see you guys play skillfully because you are dyed-in-the-wool veterans of OSR now. And so almost everything that could be interacted with in an interesting way, you did do that, which is really, really gratifying to see, is that you basically took everything that the module was offering and interacted with it.
Did we miss any particularly dangerous spots? Did we like bypass something that you were like, oh, they're screwed? Like, did you have like that moment where you thought we were all dead?
I thought you might piss off Cerwello, and maybe accidentally or deliberately, in case then there would have been a full-on battle, and he would have been really, really nasty. If you didn't, the most, besides Cerwello's stats, the most difficult creature to beat was the Guardian statue. He was a beast. That's a TPK. Like he's really, really nasty, it's definitely, he's more of like a puzzle than he was like a combat encounter, which you guys immediately just figured that out, which is great.
Oh yeah.
The other thing too is that this since I have nothing to lose here because we're not playing an ongoing campaign, the random encounter chance was I had to roll every turn that passed. I rolled, and there was a 1 in 6 chance of something occurring, and I hit it twice.
Wow.
I hit it twice. Yeah. So there's a lot of.
What were the two random things?
So one random was the appearance of the entrance chamber in the wolves painting, wolves tapestry. That was random. And the other one was the appearance of Cerwello just checking on you in the dreaming chamber.
Okay.
I wondered. I felt like that felt very Deus Ex Machina somehow, and I was like, why would he just show up right there? John just sends him over just to kind of kick us out of our complacency of sitting there trying to figure out what to do.
Oh no!
Yeah, but
I totally.
He was friendly.
John telegraphed several times that he patrols.
Yeah.
And that, he even said earlier in the adventure, he was like, if you come look for me in my rooms, I may not be there because I'm often wandering.
Nice, Mike. Yeah, you remember that.
So, I understood that, but it just felt like right at that moment for him to show up was, I assumed it was not random. And I assumed John was like, he's going to go on patrol. Like,
no, it was just totally random.
That was random.
John, were there anything else that were more combat oriented? Because one thing that I loved about this module, especially with our party, was that there was no combat unless we started it or stumbled into it or said something stupid or like whatever. Because I was dreading like taking my character into a combat situation this whole game.
No, I'm guessing at his design intentions because I haven't gotten this clearly from him, but it certainly seems to me from the design that this is not only like a starter adventure for Dolmenwood, but it's also a starter adventure similar to Tomb of the Serpent Kings, where it's supposed to be a teaching module. So the lethality has sort of been dropped down just a little bit because this is my impression. I could be wrong, but it seems that Gavin is trying to teach people who may not be used to this style of play the lessons that about solving puzzles and how not every encounter needs to be combat. If you guys weren't veterans, you probably would have learned quickly that touching the caterpillar's food is not good. That sort of thing.
We still did that.
Well, also, the telegraphing was clear, and even I don't know how you say post telegraphing, but we screwed up and messed with the caterpillars before asking or whatever. We broke the rules of decorum, and he showed up and was wagged his finger at us. Right? He didn't just murder us. He was like, "Don't do that here." It was very clearly stated. Don't make a fuss here. Try to figure this out.
Yeah. Was that and the fact that he wasn't a bad guy?
Was that a GM choice or was that something that was written?
It was written. Yeah, that's how he would react. But it was left up to me about how far you guys would push it before he actually attacks. Right. So I thought about actually having him. He was very close to going all out battle last session whenever Crump tossed over the Cauldron. Right, but it was your guys' role playing that caused him to forgive you one last time. But I definitely would have broken out combat if you guys had screwed around in any sort of major way again. So before we go, I just want to let you guys know there were two major things that you didn't interact with that was not your fault. But I just want one is the random encounter. So this is what you could have sort of encountered that may have led to more combat. One, you hungry caterpillars might have been searching around for food. And seeing only you would have attacked immediately.
Okay.
A random pot of soup would have escaped from the kitchen and animated and looked to harm you deliberately, unlike the rest of the utensils. Sprites may have manifested. Sprites are super cool. You actually encountered them in the incandescent grottos. They're really fun because there's a whole bunch of different varieties and they all do crazy things. And I would have had to roll that randomly, so it would have been fun for me too. Cerwello was one that you hit, so you got that one. One was gravity ceases for 1d4 turns, so you actually float upwards. I was hoping for that one. One was a vision of a random location, which is you hit that. So I actually did roll that randomly. You actually roll whatever the number of rooms are in this dungeon, and then I just looked up on the key, and it happened to be the entrance chamber, and that's what you guys saw. The one is just like a flavor thing where you sort of oh no, it's not flavor. You hear a sinister chuckle and magical darkness descends for 1d6 turns. Mundane light sources are ineffective, but magical light and moon sight enable vision. So that would have been a kind of a problem. And the last one was everything tinges scarlet and creatures' eyes and mouths double in size. You have to roll a save versus spell or you become mistrustful and suspicious, and all reaction rolls suffer a -2 penalty. So that might have been actually pretty rough if you were dealing with Cerwello again.
That's scary, right? That's when he dives the Dolmenwood into the realm of I'm out.
A little bit of horror, right? A lot of dark stuff. Yeah. That's and then lastly, you didn't interact with the Cauldron of Places. You didn't use the pewter rod on the Cauldron of Places. So this was actually really cool, and this is what part of the adventure that I love is that it drops seeds for there's the assumption that this is a small break within a larger Dolmenwood campaign. Sure. And what the Cauldron of Places does is it actually gives you the opportunity to continue adventuring in wildly different places. So the opening thing is always the Dreaming Chamber. So you always sort of see the shag carpet maroon thing as the first thing. But if you had the pewter rod, you could see other things. And one would take you to the wine cellar. One would take you to the glade right outside. So it would just exit you out of the Cauldron. But the other three are across Dolmenwood, like in other places. So one takes you to the Hall of Sleep, which is the head of House Gillifer. So you would have actually gone to the Hall of Sleep. One is the Dark Mirror. Now, I placed this cauldron specifically at the Dark Mirror. That was my choice. But the module says that it can actually be dropped anywhere. Okay. Right? But I deliberately dropped it at the Dark Mirror. So assuming that maybe the cauldron wasn't near the Dark Mirror, you could have gone all the way to the Dark Mirror. And the last place is a hex called Andromethea's Blossom Fields, which is sort of near Castle Brackenwold outside the forest. So, the cool thing too, though, is that it is not a gotcha moment because you would have seen the scene, right? You could have gathered at least the general idea of where these places would take you, if not the precise location. And you could have made like an informed choice about where you want to go, which is super cool.
Yeah, and by that you would have had the rods. You would have to be a purposeful choice. You couldn't do that by accident.
Correct.
You
know how it works.
Would you, if you go through, say the whole party goes through and ends up in like,
you're done,
right?
Because the cauldron come with you.
No.
So then you got to go all the way back to go get the cauldron.
Well, it depends on what you want to do. So I should be clear too. Just goes to show of an awesome GM I am. Maybe you didn't notice the last part where the swan ships come and give you that choice of going to Chateau Mauves or going to the Hypnagogia. That was made up by me. I did that. Yeah,
that was awesome, John. You're an awesome DM.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about what kind of bonus this is going to give our characters in AV?
0.
Now, should we talk about that? Like, I think that's an important thing.
Big fat 0. But I'm really proud of you, if that matters.
Mike, gather your tears in a decanter and send them to John.
DM would have put a view of the Arden Vool, in the cauldron, and we could have
totally
joined Mort and company,
or zoomed in on a goblin orgy down in the debauch room or something.
Now that you say that would have been pretty sweet. Actually, it's like a little Easter egg. Oh well. But,
all of our characters would have immediately died.
you see a vision. There's a dead goblin and a dead priest, and they're all flying there full of arrows. And,
well, it was. I really enjoyed it. Like, and we may not see this in like what we played through could be very different because it is unpublished. Of course, it's still in development, but
I presume it's been play tested before us. So,
well, I don't know. From. Once again, I can't verify this, but I'm fairly sure that Gavin is testing it with his own group.
Yeah.
And he may have sent it out to a few more people, but as far as I know, I think we have an exclusive as far as the public goes.
What was it we did that actually opened the cat mouth? Was it the real tears
food
on the sausage, or was it
the
like
real
a
rations?
threshold of food?
So that was a thing that I actually offered a suggestion to Gavin. So the trigger that would make it actually work is these are the words that he wrote. If fed a saucepan full of real food equivalent to 20 rations,
20.
Its mouth opens wide and transforms into a door. So I was basically tallying the number of rations that you were throwing in there. But then I was also willing to kind of go with, like, if you decided to just put a heap of real food, it had to be real food, into like a big container and just throw that into the mouth, then I would have counted it as well. So that's sort of what I did with the sausages. Like once you made the sausages and just tossed the whole thing, I was like, that's fine. Because I kind of knew that if you fed real food in and it was still doing the same thing, you just would have been more frustrated and unhappy than
you would have thought that wasn't working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think it was a fair interpretation.
Yeah, no.
But the one thing I had to be hard on was that it had to be real food, so you had to figure out that tier mystery.
That part's great. I do think that like the 20 thing. If all four of us had put all of our rations in and nothing had changed, we'd be like, well, that was just stupid. And we would have.
In fact, we did wander away from that room for like a really long time, right? Like, not that was bad. my other question is the room with the big moon face in it, where you make it cry and get the tears. Is there a trap on the floor or anything like that? Because we were so careful about floating over.
That's true. Yeah, you handled that well. Yeah, there was a trap. I should find that for you. Let's see. What room was that?
Turned mosslings into normal humans.
Turn mosslings into chunky salsa.
Oh, that could be.
It's a trap, but it's not like harmful. It just kind of sets you back. So if you step on a green square, the Trixie green, you have to make a saving throw versus hold, or you disappear and fall out of the cauldron. Back in
the real world.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I thought you fell back in the real world, but you don't. Interesting. So they actually might be good for you if you have. So it makes you fall out it makes you fall out of the cauldron of places. So you would have fallen into that room. So that actually if you hadn't found that cauldron and it hadn't figured out a way to access it, that could have been like an accidental way to actually get to it, which is kind of cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's what would have happened, but it's not deadly. Just kind of.
Did he have some kind of mechanism written in there for like we spotted the trap, right? So we just avoided it. But let's say you spotted the trap and you were forced to walk through. Did you have to make like a dex check or something like that to not step on green, or how did that work?
No,
it was just not do it. They were like big squares, man. You just hop from one to the other.
Yeah,
so
you just
it
had to
only
figure
be someone really
out.
oblivious, just who was like, I go in the room, like Mort said would have done, and hit the green.
I was waiting for you to kind of tell me that you were not being careful, but Grimo was all over it, so it was all good.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I had confidence. I knew that you guys are so good at picking up my telegraphing now that I wasn't really worried at all. But I thought it's a really cool little slice of a nice little self-contained adventure.
Cheers for Gavin. That was great.
I loved it. I'm super excited. Thanks, John. Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you to Gavin for providing this for us, and for this treat for everybody to kind of see what's in store for us. So pretty cool.
So John, here's the question that's burning in my mind: when they exited, does Grimo still have a red balloon tied to his butt?
Oh, and so that was a green thing that you actually didn't turn, a dream thing that you didn't turn, right? So you did drag that. Oh, and the sword. We never figured out the sword either, right?
Yeah, we left the sword purposefully dreamy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the sword and the balloon, which you would have taken out in a dream state into the thing. So this is what happens with dream stuff.
Hindenburg.
Let's see. Let me just check here.
Mossling just everywhere.
So, okay, so if you take dream stuff out of the cauldron into the real world, they will evaporate after 1d6 turns.
Okay.
So that's what would occur with both the balloon and the sword. And retroactively applying teardrops in the mortal world have no effect. You have to apply the teardrops in the dream world, transform them real, then take them out of the cauldron, and then they would be permanent. So awesome. So both your balloon and your sword end up disappearing after about an hour or so.
But only after he floated 300 feet up into the air.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Lake. See you later, suckers.
Yeah, there were a few people on the Discord who were actually talking about the ship, and they were like, "It's a perfect bridge for a Spelljammer campaign," just like you said, Meg. Which is true. Yeah.
I would love to play an OSE version of Spelljammer. I never played that as a kid. I always looked crazy.
Oh, it's the best. I played it. It was great. But the sage who gave you the thing, that was actually he gives you a couple of hooks about how to get into the module. I picked that one to retrieve the moon map. So that was not my doing. That was Gavin. And that sage is not a one-off thing just for the module. Like there's a whole write-up in the hex, and he's got a whole other bunch of shit going on that you could engage with. So if you actually wanted to, if your goal was not to return the cauldron to the Duke, but to return the map, if your priority was to bring the map back to the sage, then we would engage with full Dolmenwood, where you're interacting with travel points and going through the hexes and going back to back to that particular hex and interact with him, and he would probably provide you with other seeds and stuff for bringing back what he wanted, and that very well could have turned into some sort of weird Spelljammer sort of thing. Like if he's got his map, he's like, I'm going to the moon. It would have been crazy.
Who wants to go
players?
Yeah. So it's cool in that it was both self-contained, but then gives you it opens the world up wide for a beginning player to then continue on with their adventure. So it's very, very cool. I liked it. Cool. All right, we'll call it a night, and we'll head back to the awfulness that is Ardenvool next time. Looking forward to that. All right, guys.